My son Liam, a 30-year-old surgical resident, has no idea that his mother, the quiet, unassuming university librarian, is A.J. Croft. He doesn't know that the advance for my last book deal could comfortably buy the entire surgical wing his in-laws just funded. He doesn't know that the film rights for the Obsidian Crown trilogy, which I wrote on a second-hand laptop at my kitchen table, just sold for a staggering $85 million. To him, I'm just Mum. The woman who wears cardigans, packs her own lunch and lives in the same modest rent-controlled apartment we've been in for 20 years, and that's exactly how I've always wanted it. I grew up with nothing, and when my husband Liam's father died, he left me with a 10-year-old boy and a mountain of medical debt. The library was my sanctuary, but writing was my escape. It became my secret, and then it became my fortune. But I never changed my life. I never told Liam. I wanted him to find his own way, to be driven by passion, not by a safety net. I wanted him to become a man who valued hard work and integrity, not one who waited for an inheritance. And he did. He became a doctor. He fell in love with Sophie, a kind if somewhat timid young woman from a family with staggering wealth. Then, one Tuesday, he called. His voice was tight, stretched thin with a nervousness I hadn't heard since his first day of high school. "Mum, you free this Saturday? Sophie's parents are in town. They're a lot, but they're dying to meet you." My stomach tightened. I knew exactly who the Harrisons were. Arthur and Beatrice Harrison, real estate moguls who plastered their names on every building they funded. They were loud, ostentatious, new money, who desperately tried to act like old-world aristocracy. "Of course, honey," I said, my voice calm. "Where are we meeting?" "That's the thing," Liam stammered. "They booked a place. Le Ciel. It's fancy. Really fancy. So, maybe wear the blue dress. The one you wore to my graduation." The blue dress. My one good dress which I'd bought at a discount department store. "Mum," he continued, I just want this to go well. They're particular." "Particular? What does that mean, Liam?" There was a long, painful pause. I told them you were a librarian, that you were very intellectual, that you live a quiet life." The subtext was a foghorn. "You're poor and bookish, please don't embarrass me." A cold, sharp clarity settled over me. He wasn't ashamed of me, not really. He was afraid for me. He was afraid of what they would think. And in that moment, I decided, if they were expecting a mousy, underpaid librarian, I would give them one. I wouldn't be meeting them as Elena, the successful self-made woman, and I certainly wouldn't be meeting them as A.J. Croft, one of the best-selling authors in the world. No. I would be meeting them as the woman they already pictured. A poor, simple, intellectual widow barely scraping by. I decided to see just how they would treat someone they believed had absolutely nothing. What happened that night didn't just expose their true colours. It ended up rewriting my son's entire future. Saturday came. I bypassed the blue dress. Instead, I pulled out the worst outfit I owned. A faded, pilled grey cardigan with mismatched buttons. A shapeless brown skirt that hit my ankle at an awkward length. A pair of sensible, scuffed loafers I used for gardening. I pulled my hair back into a severe, tight bun. No makeup, not a drop of jewellery. I grabbed the old canvas tote bag I'd gotten for free from a public radio fundraiser 10 years ago. I looked in the mirror. I looked like a woman who life had thoroughly worn down. Forgettable. Perfect. I took a taxi to Le Ciel. It was one of those absurd restaurants on the 50th floor, all glass and steel, with a view of the entire city. The kind of place that charged $30 for a glass of water and called it curated. I walked in, and the hostess looked at me with an expression of barely concealed horror. "Can I help you?" she asked, as if I had wandered in looking for the bathroom. "I'm here for the Harrison party," I said, my voice small and timid. Her eyes widened just for a second before she composed herself. "Of course. This way." She led me across the plush carpet, and there they were, holding court at the best table in the house, right against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Liam and Sophie stood when they saw me. Liam looked anxious. Sophie just looked pale. But Arthur and Beatrice Harrison, they didn't stand. They just sat there waiting like royalty. Beatrice was draped in a truly staggering amount of diamonds. Her hair was platinum blonde, shellacked into a perfect unmoving helmet. Arthur wore an immaculate suit, a giant gold watch on his wrist, and a look of profound boredom. "Mum," Liam said, his voice cracking. He kissed my cheek. "This is Beatrice and Arthur Harrison. This is my mother, Elena." I put on my most nervous, mousy smile. "It's so lovely to meet you. My, what a view." Beatrice extended a hand, her rings cold and heavy. Her handshake was limp, lasting no more than a second. "Charmed," she said, her voice dripping with insincerity. Her eyes did a quick, brutal scan, from my scuffed shoes to my frayed cardigan to my canvas bag. It was an appraisal, and I had been found worthless. Arthur just nodded, a dismissive flick of his head. "Elena, good of you to make it." They seated me at the end of the table, the furthest from them, as if I were a distant, unfortunate relative. The waiter, taking his cue from Beatrice, treated me with polite disdain. He handed me the heavy, leather-bound menu, written entirely in French. I opened it and pretended to look utterly bewildered. Beatrice watched me for a moment before letting out a theatrical sigh. "Oh dear. It can be a bit overwhelming, can't it?" She leaned over to the waiter. "My mother-in-law will have the house white, the least expensive one you have, and perhaps just the chicken. Something simple." "That sounds wonderful," I murmured, playing the part. "Thank you." The conversation, if you could call it that, began. It wasn't a conversation, it was a performance, and I was the unwilling audience. "The flight from Dubai was just exhausting," Beatrice announced to no one in particular, "but we simply had to pick up Arthur's new car. They only made 12 of them." "A good investment," Arthur grunted, swirling a glass of deep red wine. "Unlike the market. Our portfolio is up 40%, of course, but one has to diversify." He then turned his gaze on me. It felt like an insect being pinned to a board. "So, Elena, a librarian, how quaint." He said the word quaint as if it was something he'd stepped in. "Must be wonderful to have so much time to read." "I do enjoy it," I said softly. "We, of course, believe in literature," Beatrice chimed in, adjusting her diamond necklace. "We just funded the new Harrison Wing at the University Library. A $3 million donation." My eyes flickered. The Harrison Wing was a notoriously vain project that had involved tearing down the entire rare manuscripts section to build a glass atrium for donor parties. "How generous," I said. Beatrice smiled, a thin, cold expression. "It's what one does. We also funded the new surgical wing at Liam's hospital. It's so important to give back. Liam will be using our equipment to practice. We believe in investing in family." The threat was clear. We own him. We own this. Liam looked down at his plate, his jaw tight. Sophie was twisting her napkin in her lap, silent. "It must be a struggle, though," Arthur said, cutting into a steak the size of my head. "On a public service salary, especially being alone. Liam must worry about your future, your retirement." I manage," I whispered, looking down. "I don't need much." "Oh, you're so brave," Beatrice said, her voice thick with false pity. "I always admire women who get by. It's so difficult when you don't have support." The food came. My simple chicken was dry and tasteless. They ate their lobster and filet mignon with gusto, all while continuing their monologue about their properties in the Hamptons, their frustration with their yacht captain, and their son-in-law's potential. Then, as dessert menus were being offered, Beatrice put her hand on my arm. Her rings were cold against my skin. Elena, dear, she said, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial, syrupy tone. Arthur and I were discussing. We are so thrilled to have Liam in the family, and we want to help. We know Liam is just starting out and he can't be, well, saddled with undue burdens. My blood went ice cold. Burdens. We'd like to offer you a stipend, she said, her voice barely a whisper. A little something to help you with your cost of living. Say, $2,000 a month? Arthur nodded, looking magnanimous. A small gift, from us to you, to ensure you're comfortable. In return, Beatrice continued, we just ask that you give Liam and Sophie the space they need. They need to be networking with important people, attending the right functions. It would be so much easier for them if they weren't worried about you. You understand? The bribe. The payoff. They were offering me $24,000 a year to disappear from my son's life. Liam, at the other end of the table, hadn't heard the quiet offer. He was trying to engage Sophie in a conversation. I took a slow, deliberate sip of my cheap acidic wine. I placed the glass down on the table. The clink was quiet, but it seemed to echo in the sudden silence. I looked at Beatrice, and for the first time all night, I made direct eye contact. The mousy, nervous librarian was gone. A stipend, I said. My voice was no longer small. It was level, clear, and cold. Beatrice blinked, surprised by the change in tone. Yes, a gesture. How generous, I said. $2,000 a month. Tell me, Beatrice, is that the going rate for a mother's silence, or is that the special in-law discount? Her smile froze. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. I turned to Arthur. And the surgical wing. A $5 million donation I read in the papers. A very generous tax deduction. And a wonderful way to get your name on a building, to make people think you're a philanthropist, when really it's just a branding exercise. Arthur's face darkened. Now, you listen here. No, I said, my voice cutting through his. You listen. Both of you. I pushed my chair back slightly. I could feel Liam and Sophie's eyes on me now. The whole table was silent. You're right, Arthur. I am a librarian. It's a noble profession. And I was a librarian 25 years ago, when my husband died and left me with a 10-year-old son and a pile of medical debt that would have drowned you. I looked at my son. His face was pale, confused. I was a librarian when I worked 60 hours a week at the university and then came home at night to a second job, a data entry gig that I did until 3 a.m. And when I was done with that, I wrote. Beatrice scoffed. You wrote? A diary? A book, I said, my eyes locking on hers. And then another, and then another. I wrote to survive. I wrote to process my grief. I wrote because it was the only thing I owned, the only thing I could build that someone like you couldn't take from me. Mom, Liam whispered, what are you talking about? You're right, Arthur, I continued, ignoring him for a second. I do have a lot of time to read, but mostly I write. You see, you know me as Elena, your quaint little librarian. I leaned forward. But my publisher and the rest of the world, they know me as A.J. Croft. The silence that fell was absolute. It was so total I could hear the faint sound of traffic 50 floors below. Sophie's hands flew to her mouth. Liam's jaw had literally dropped. Beatrice just stared. What? A.J. Croft? Arthur sputtered, his face draining of all colour. The Obsidian Crown books, that's not possible. Why? I asked, raising an eyebrow. Because I'm not wearing diamonds. Because I'm not rude to the waitstaff. The film rights, Arthur stammered. The trade said they just sold for $85 million, I finished for him. And my last advance for the prequel, $12 million. So you see, Beatrice, your offer of $2,000 a month is touching. But I think I'll be fine. I looked at Liam. His eyes were wide, shining with a million questions. I never told you, honey, I said, my voice softening. Because I wanted you. I wanted you to find your own passion. I wanted you to become a man who saves lives because he wants to, not because he can afford to. I didn't want this money to define you. I didn't want you to become them. I gestured to the Harrisons. They looked like they had been slapped. I came here tonight in my old clothes, I said, my voice rising again, because my son, whom I love more than life, was afraid you would judge me, and I wanted to see if he was right. I wanted to see the people who had his fiancée's ear, and you didn't disappoint. You judged me, you pitied me, you patronized me, and then you tried to buy me. You tried to pay me to abandon my own son so he wouldn't embarrass you at your cocktail parties. Beatrice was as white as a sheet. We were only trying to help. You were trying to control, I shot back. You use your money like a weapon to buy loyalty, to put your name on buildings, to make yourselves feel powerful. But you're not powerful. You're just empty. I signaled for the waiter. He hurried over, his face a mask of neutrality. Yes, madam? I reached into my canvas tote bag, past the old library book and my wallet. I pulled out the one thing I carried that A.J. Croft's business manager insisted on. I placed the matte black American Express Centurion card on the table. The check, I said. For everyone, and a 50% tip for you and the hostess. I apologize for my guests' behavior. The waiter looked at the card, then at my face. His eyes widened. He recognized the card. Of course, madam, he said, his entire demeanor changing. Arthur and Beatrice just stared at the card, speechless. They knew exactly what it was. They knew it couldn't be bought. It had to be earned. I stood up. I put my old cardigan back on. Mum, Liam said, standing up with me. He was in shock, but his eyes were clear. He looked at me, really looked at me, and then he smiled. A.J. Croft, really? We'll talk, I smiled back. He grabbed Sophie's hand. She was crying, but she stood up. Liam, let's go, she whispered. We're going with my mother, Liam said to the Harrisons. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The power in the room had shifted, completely and permanently. We walked out of the restaurant, leaving Arthur and Beatrice Harrison sitting alone at their $1 million table in stunned, humiliated silence. The aftermath was intense. Liam and I talked all night. He was hurt I'd kept the secret, but he understood. He understood I had given him the gift of a normal life, a life where he had to fight for his own success. And he was furious at the Harrisons. The next day, he and Sophie confronted them. Beatrice and Arthur didn't apologize. They were enraged, not because they were cruel, but because they had been exposed. They threatened to pull their funding from the hospital, to cut Sophie off. And Sophie, in a voice I'd never heard from her, told them to go ahead. She said she'd rather be poor with Liam than be rich with them. A week later, Sophie came to the university library. Not my apartment, but my library, my world. She was dressed in simple jeans and a sweater. She was terrified. I read all your books, she whispered, in 3 days. They're incredible. Thank you, I said, stacking a cart of books. Eleanor, Mrs. Croft, I'm so ashamed. I've been a coward my whole life. I let them be who they are. I never stood up to them. You're standing up to them now, I said gently. I want to be better, she cried softly. I don't want to be like them. I want to be like you. Someone who is strong, who has worth, without all of that. I stopped my work and looked at her. You don't become strong by having money, Sophie, I told her. You become strong by having principles you refuse to sell. Your parents' money is their prison. They're trapped by it. They can't see anything else. You can. She wiped her eyes. Can you teach me? I smiled, a real warm smile. I can't teach you, but you can learn. Start by coming here. On Saturdays, We need volunteers to read to the kids in the children's wing." Her face lit up. "Really? Really? It doesn't pay anything," I said with a twinkle in my eye. "I don't care," she said, and for the first time, I saw the woman my son had fallen in love with. "I don't care at all." That night, for the first time, the three of us had dinner. Not at Luciel, but at my tiny apartment, eating pasta I'd made, served on my mismatched plates, and as I watched Liam and Sophie laugh, truly happy and free, I realised my secret was out. But I hadn't lost a thing. I had gained a daughter, and I had confirmed what I always knew. True wealth isn't in your bank account. It's in your integrity. It's in the family you build. And it's in knowing, without a shadow of a doubt, exactly what your price is. Not for sale,